So I discovered him with A Few Good Men, the film. I was in the Marines at the time that that came out, and it was playing on our base, the theater we had on the base in Quantico. So like we were right close to where they would have been talking about. And it spoke to all of us. And I saw it, and I came back to the barracks, and I was telling my friends, "You have to see this. It's so amazing." And at that time, of course, I didn't know anything about him, but then over the years, I came to know who he was. And then when Sports Night started, and I got into that, and then there were more articles about him, and I was like, "Oh my God, he did A Few Good Men," and so I was already on board.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, but we are getting off the Bruce Springsteen train, and we are joining one of my other entertainment obsessions, Aaron Sorkin. And in fact, right before I hit record, I told my guest, good show, like we were about to do an episode of Sports Night. Sarah, welcome so much to the show. Thank you for joining me.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you. You've been a wonderful connection all these years, and so I'm really honored that you invited me.
Yeah, so Sarah and I go back. She is, I have to say, one of my first online friends. Back in the day when back when you did mailing lists and, you know, uh, I was part of a Aaron Sorkin fan base, and we just did replies in each mail and email chains every time there was a new episode of West Wing. And Sarah was our list mom and kind of tried to keep everything rolling and everyone civil. And it being the internet, it wasn't always, but I fell in love with your personality and your friendship, and so I am thrilled for getting to talk.
I am too, and I appreciate that so much. Um, yeah, there it had its moments, and the internet was new when we
Yes.
started this. We started that group in '99, I
Yeah,
think.
I think so.
Because we'd been part of something else that was like just Sports Night related. And then I thought, well, God, we talk about his writing so much. Why don't we just have a group that's just about him? And I thought that just brought so many interesting people into it. Even with the disagreements and stuff, it was still interesting and it was still thoughtful. Um, and so I think it's actually one of the internet's successes looking back on it, being that everything was new. We were learning about mistakes. We're learning about how things happen in real time. But our love of that, I don't know, just the higher minded stuff that Aaron
Yes.
brought, I think, and that's why I was. And I know everybody didn't like it, but I tried to bring a higher minded discourse to the group. I was like,
Yes.
we're here and we like him because of the higher intelligence, the higher use of language. And so, you got the rest of the internet to be a jerk,
Yeah.
to be thoughtless, to be rude, to be vulgar. Let's make this a place where it's a safe haven for intelligence. And I got feedback that was like, you know, the internety.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I was like, yeah, but I think most people are on board with this with me.
yeah, and what I really loved and is it was perfectly acceptable to say this storyline didn't work for me, or I don't feel this character is behaving in a way I like.
Mhm.
Um, but it set us to a discussion, not a this sucks.
Yeah.
Okay, or, this is a piece of doo-doo. Like,
Yeah.
okay, then you're fine. Go somewhere else on the internet to, talk on this. If you want to talk about, how you you didn't you didn't think that like Josh would behave this way, or what how Leo was working, and or maybe inconsistencies, and Aaron is famous for not necessarily, like I used to say, Aaron could really use an editor, and not to edit his words, but someone who goes, no, 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 Aaron, you've already set up this precedent in your universe, you know, because he's brilliant enough that he could write around that. But so we had that kind of fun, and it made it made us enjoy the show more, at least from my perspective. And I made friends like you and Yvonne and other people that I still interact with socially, not all the time, but you know, you immediately, when I reached out to you, went, Jesse, how are you doing? Are you okay? And join me. And so I think that's awfully a wonderful blessing that we got from just a silly TV show.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it today. We got each other through a lot of stuff. We
Yeah,
went
we
through
did.
9/11. We supported each other through 9/11, through a lot of stuff that happened after that, through stuff that was happening with us personally.
Yes.
And it just felt to me like kind of the best of what the internet has to offer. And I'm so grateful to all of you that I'm still connected with too. It's with like you, there are many.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm very grateful for all of that.
And I hadn't thought about this before, but I think a lot of what you did, and not as the list mom and the other members of the group, and uh, we were together, we kind of had peer pressure, like, hey, this isn't that kind of mailing list, is a lot of the spirit that I bring into my podcasting, whether it's my Doctor Who podcast with Charles, or with the Bruce Springsteen podcast, or anything else I do. It's I can criticize something, or I can say this doesn't work for me, but that doesn't mean I'm ugly or hateful, and because someone is trying to do something creatively, and whether it works or not, it's hard to be creative. It is hard to, like Kevin Pollak said, no one tries to make a bad movie, trust me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And uh, having made a short film myself, um, which starred one of our peeps who is still a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's fun, and I
Yeah.
learned a lot from it. But it's still difficult. And I actually said to Aaron once, I think probably in the height of the West Wing, I was like, I don't know how you do this. And I don't know if it's you or everybody else. And he was like, I assure you, it's everybody else. And he was like that publicly. I don't think that that was his inner
Hmm.
monologue. I think he knew he was good. Although he, had his human stuff like the rest of us.
Yeah.
But he was very much like, I can't believe who I'm surrounded with, that, putting this together, it just, it wouldn't be happening this way if it was just me.
So Sarah, there is a reason why the episode that we're recording is being released today, isn't it?
Sports Night and The West Wing both premiered on September 22nd in sequential years. Sports Night was September 22nd, 98, and West Wing was September 22nd, 99.
I did not know they started on the same day. So this is perfect because Sarah and I are old friends, as we were just talking about. And so have the opportunity to talk Sports Night and Aaron Sorkin highlights and release it on the anniversary of both shows is perfect. I do want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, give us your elevator pitch, and then we're going to go right back into talking more Aaron.
Oh gosh, where do I start? Oh gosh. Okay, so my name is Sarah Price. I started the group that we all came together on talking about Aaron's work and all of Aaron's work, the plays and the movies and everything. So mostly it started from sports night because we were very rabid fans.
Absolutely.
It had a small but very rabid fan base, and rightfully so. It was genius, and now seems to be mostly forgotten, which is sad to me because I watched a little bit of it today, and it still holds up.
So I will tell you, Sarah, and you can go back to doing your elevator pitch. I had just recently had surgery, so I was off work for like 5, 6 weeks,
Mhm.
and I rewatched Sports Night in its entirety,
Mm.
and just said over and over again, I I'm remembering how great this was,
Yeah.
and how wonderful this was, and how clever it was, and how it is truly, there are some moments in there that just make me smile.
Mm.
um, During the lockdown, I saw all of West Wing again. I went through, all 7 seasons, and watched that again, and kind of enjoyed um, Josh Molina and Hershey's, West Wing Weekly, to kind of, because that felt like what you you and I or other members of the group could do, right? If we weren't Josh Molina, that could actually talk about the inside, but just the idea of two people who love the show discussing it. And so I revisited that. So it was really nice to go back there again. So you're in California, correct?
No, actually, I moved back to Texas.
Oh, that's right. You are
Yeah,
back in Texas.
yeah.
Yes.
So I moved back in 2018. So I'm in the Dallas area.
Okay.
So actually, I don't think I'm far from you. Weren't you in?
Now,
Are you in Carrollton?
yeah, I'm in Louisville,
Oh,
so we will now need to meet.
need to
eh,
meet for real.
yes, we do. We do need to meet for real. So that's good. Well, very nice. So can you remember when you first discovered Aaron's work? And, I usually ask the question, when can you describe finding Bruce Springsteen music, and if you can say why it spoke to you, try to articulate it. So I'm going to twist this. You discovered Aaron Sorkin, and can you explain maybe what about his prose and his writing spoke to you?
So I discovered him with A Few Good Men, the film. I was in the Marines at the time that that came out, and it was playing on our base, the theater we had on the base in Quantico. So like we were right close to where they would have been talking about. Like, and it spoke to all of us. And I saw it, and I came back to the barracks, and I was telling my friends, "You have to see this. It's so amazing." And at that time, of course, I didn't know anything about him, but then over the years, I came to know who he was. And then when Sports Night started, and I got into that, and then there were more articles about him, and I was like, "Oh my God, he did A Few Good Men," and so I was already on board. I think it was because of I mean, the dialogue for sure, the buildup
Yeah.
of drama, his understanding of characters and drama, that when it's that good, you're just in it,
Yeah.
you're just sucked into it. You're not going, oh, he did that well, he did that well. It's just like, I just want to be in this. And so I saw that so many times, and I felt like there was a respect for the Marines in that spoke to us on the base as well. Um, and so uh, when I started his group, he thought he was being punked by Josh Molina.
Yeah.
So he emailed me and he was like, if I find out this is a joke. And it was just the most amazing thing to be connected to him. And I worked at Disney at the time that Sports Night started. And when I fell in love with that, I would go down to the Disney lot when I had a chance, and just hang around the sound stage, because it was just to be near it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because I've never had that reaction to television before.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think I did not realize at the time I had liked A Few Good Men, but I fell in love with The American President.
Hmm.
I just thought the how romantic it was. And
Mm.
that scene, like in the ballroom, where Annette Bening looks so beautiful and she's beaming, and you know, who is this woman and why is she dancing? I'm going to have the dialogue wrong, right? And you know, and he says because she said yes, and
Yeah.
it just, and you know, and that whole speech at the end, I love this movie. Um and then I remember, like on back when TV Guide was a thing,
Yeah.
they would in the fall preview would have shows where there's a must watch or top highlight or star. I can't remember how they did, but they did, and Sports Night was one of the shows that they had highlighted. And
Yeah.
I remember watching that pilot and enjoying it, but then when you have the kicker where he picks up his son, you know, picks up the phone and calls his son and is like, I want you to turn on this TV, and then you need to go to bed. But this guy is doing something that's, you know, that is the best that's ever, you know, done. And I just went, oh my goodness, what is this TV show I'm watching?
Mm. I was struck, and I think it was just because I've always been a writer, and
Yeah.
so I'm much more a fan of writers than I am of actors. And not, yeah, I still love actors too, but they're
Yeah.
a notch down for me. Um, but so it was like also in Malice, the God speech in
Yeah.
Malice. Um, but yeah, the pilot of Sports Night hooked me. I was so excited, and then other shows, episodes like The Apology, and that were just so incredible in not just the writing, but the whole structure of it. And there was a point I was going to make with our countdown, that he knows how to earn a moment, how
Well
to,
said. Yes.
and that the music that he uses, because he would talk about sometimes that he does dialogue as music, that there's a musicality
Hmm.
about his characters' dialogue with each other, and that just kind of pulls you in. And so he's earning the moment dramatically, and then using the exact right music to go with it, because it was written into the scripts, you know
Yeah.
uh, that Snuffy Walden, I think, in an interview, was like, yeah, it's his idea, these different songs, and I just work it into uh the score, basically.
Yeah, if I was ever lucky enough to interview him, that's what I would want to, you know, after getting past being a fanboy, I would want to talk about that, you know, talk about the how you build the score of dialogue. You know, one of the I've told this story often, Sarah, that um we were going up to we were going up to Cleveland, Ohio. We were going to go to a Springsteen concert, and my wife was like, you know, I just don't get him. I can't understand what he says. He just grunts. And I said, well, I want you to listen to his music as if it was an instrumental, and
Mm.
don't even try to understand Bruce's dialogue, his you know, singing. Just think of it as a voice, like Peter and the Wolf or something, and just try to get the emotion of the song. And that really helped her to appreciate that. And then while she certainly isn't the biggest Springsteen fan, living with me, she has at least come to tolerate and find things.
Yeah.
um, and I do think there is an emotion in Aaron's writing that is a, you know, he builds emotions, and as you said, he earns that moment, and there is a payoff. And I think um the moments we're going to talk about, I think almost all of them have that moment in there, for at least with my choices.
Yeah, and the genius thing about him earning the moment is that most of the time you don't see the moment coming.
Right.
But when you look back, you go, oh, okay, I see how he built to this. But then the moment was a surprise,
Yes.
but completely earned. And when that's paired with the exact right moment, the exact right passion uh, in the character's voice, uh, it's it's magic, you know. And I say that in the highest regard, that it's there's a magic about creation in general, but when all of that can come together, it's just amazing. And it's easy to see, I think, why we got so swept up in it.
Yeah. And and you've often, I know one of the other things is, um and you were always a defender of, Amy Sherman Palladino,
Yeah.
because when people talk about great writers on TV, Aaron Sorkin, Ron Moore, whoever you want to talk about, she often got pushed aside. And this was at the height of the Gilmore Girls. Um, and now then, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel
Yeah.
is just truly a treasure.
It is.
And it is amazing how well, in her own way, the dialogue is just as clever as Aaron's, just as as strong. And unfortunately, Josh Whedon, little harder to be a big fan of Josh Whedon. So you got to separate the work from the person, right? And it just, I am so proud as a fan of seeing what she's done.
She she is amazing, and I love that she's always stuck by her own voice. And I know that there was like a time when they were trying to give Aaron credit for Gilmore Girls, like that, like Amy was a pen name or something.
Mm,
And just that dismissal of, because like Joss Whedon and Amy and Daniel Palladino came from Roseanne,
yeah.
and their work was brilliant there too. So it's like, I mean, it was just a moment, but it was
Yeah.
telling.
It was telling. And back to Aaron, right? Like, I had heard good things about Molly's Game, finally got a chance to see it, and fell in love with this movie, right? Like everything about it. And I went and bought the book, and I was so disappointed in the book,
Um,
just because it I mean, it's kind of the same story, but it's not the same story, right? And and I'm like, I guess when Aaron punches up your life, it comes across, a little better. And
that
you
was
know,
great for being his directorial debut. It
yes,
was so smooth,
yes, yeah,
the pacing was fantastic. The staging of how he explained how the game worked and how her part in it worked and her thought process. And that's not easy to do because a lot of that would be internal. Um, so I thought he did great on that, and the trial of the Chicago Seven.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, and I'm just thrilled for him that he's still doing such great work. And I hope he continues for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, he is not he is not repeating himself. I mean,
Yeah.
he continues to now, they did the live reading, for the special on West Wing, and he's looking at doing A Few Good Men for TV. But, the studio, the Chicago Seven, and the Lucy and Ricard, Ricky story, and Molly's Game, he has continued to push himself and to try different things. I
And
was
the
lucky to
social
go ahead.
network,
Huh?
the social network.
Yeah.
When I heard about that, I was like, it's about what? The,
Yes.
the start of Facebook? What are you going to do with that? But it was amazing.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough. One of the local, this was years ago, but one of the local theaters did his play about the invention of television, right? Of Farnsworth.
Yeah, yeah. Eric
And
Hollis.
I was like, oh my, and it was just, I don't mean just, but it was local actors and I was captivated by that. It was a fascinating play, and it felt like him, and which was really, really pretty cool.
Yeah, he would talk to me a bit about that, and I actually found I found the I think of the word. Sorry, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
But I found the patent. I found the patent,
Okay.
and brought it to him while he was still putting that together. I don't know if he ever used it, but I was like, "Oh, look what I found! Look what I found!"
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I agree. He's always got these really interesting ideas, and I think he just goes to what's interesting to him, and that is such a wide variety of things that you never know what the next thing is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, Sarah and I were talking about we wanted to catch up, we wanted to talk, but um, September is this is the 6th anniversary of Set Lusting Bruce. So I've been doing this podcast for this will starting my 6th year, and I wanted to do some special episodes. And so I reached out to Sarah and I said, "Hey, how do you feel about let's talk Aaron and then maybe come up with our top 5 musical moments of Aaron's work?" And you graciously said, "Absolutely, Jesse, it sounds like a blast." So thank you for that so much. Um, I knew immediately 5 or 6 that I wanted to pick. How
Right.
about you?
Yeah. And I did go back over just in case I was forgetting anything. And like you, I've got some honorable mentions as well. And I'm sure we're going to overlap on some stuff.
Yes.
But, I've got some moments that I'll explain. Like they may not be what you would immediately go to, but I'll explain why I chose them.
Okay. So what I think we'll do is we'll go, and I don't know if you've ranked yours. I kind of sort of ranked mine,
Yeah,
5 through 1, and then we'll go through our honorable mentions.
that sounds
Um,
great. I
all right.
ranked them just to be organized.
Yes,
Um, but yeah, it's hard to say that's better than that. So
exactly. Yes.
in some order.
All
Yeah.
right. So you're number 5.
Okay. So, and this is before anybody else brought this up. I already had it on my list, but the jackal,
Oh, absolutely.
because I think it said so much about CJ and how they regarded her, what they thought of her, how much they enjoyed her, and what that kind of bond of friendship that allows her to. And I know it started because it was actually something that Allison Janney did, it would do in her trailer. And so they wrote it in, or he wrote it into the show. But I thought it was also a really good device for how much they just, how bonded they were as a group, but also how much they love CJ.
Yeah, absolutely a great choice. I love the idea that, Aaron, and he talks about that in interviews, right? Like he's always looking for ideas and, sucking out, in that great moment. Boy, talk about someone who Allison Janney, right, has done so well. I mean, post West Wing, and she was brilliant in West Wing, but it is inspiring how much she has brought to the table,
Yeah.
since that. And, if you will, I'm sure you can remember, Sarah, when they were interviewing during the show, you know, other actors would say, "Oh, Allison Janney is a built-in. She could be a '40s,
Yeah.
screwball comedy, comedian in anything." And to see the greatness of Mom is just so wonderful. So,
Yeah.
ooh, love that choice. So, I know one of the things that we talked about beforehand is that um, Newsroom and Studio 60 spoke to me a little bit more than you did. So my number 5 is from Studio 60, um, the focus group.
Mm.
And it's one of the early episodes, and they found out that all of a sudden the ratings are up, and there's this great scene where they go, this affiliate's calling, complaining, because their switchboard is being flooded with calls because they're not showing Studio 60. And Will You Love Me Tomorrow, which is one of my favorite songs, and the Dave Mason cover of it. And I always think that Will You Love Me Tomorrow, when you have a guy singing the song, brings a little different vision. And so that point when, Abby's, taking away his car, and he's like, he's picking up from the chauffeur, and he's like, we can only go down from here, just is the perfect blend of Aaron, like, I'm happy, but at the same time, I know there's another another shoe gonna fall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good moment, and that's such a gorgeous song. And the beauty of that song being that it is adaptable to a lot of different kind of situations, but just doing that right, it's yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you're number 4.
Number 4. Okay, from Sports Night, Boogie Shoes.
Yes.
Because that I thought that episode was so genius because it was the first episode that they had. It was from Dear Louise. It was from the first episode where they had Jeremy writing to his sister, who we find out later is deaf, and so that's kind of where the letter writing comes in. And I think it was actually a trope that was used on MASH that he adapted to Sports Night. But it was great because there didn't have to be one continuous storyline. It was, I mean, there were storylines, but it was a great way to introduce, sort of like with the Jackal, their bond with each other. Um, and even though Jeremy was still new at that point, that they were bonding with him too. And it was just funny, but it was also just the way that it was um, the perfect song, the unexpected but perfect.
Well, yeah, and they talk about, right, like, if Dana has enough alcohol in her,
Yeah,
she'll want to act a certain way. And the whole line about, I make enough money, I don't have to go and, discount. And it was, hey, it's all about that. Yeah. And Blue, really, really funny. And it really sets off Josh Molina and Jeremy, his character in going that. And then I also love I never can find a stamp, and him like, well, it always turns out when I need one, I get one.
yeah,
So absolutely great choice.
yeah.
So go
And
ahead.
really the beginning of him and Natalie starting to
Yes.
come together as well, but again in an organic way, not in
Yes.
oh, now it has to be that there's a romance between these two young cuties. And
Mhm. Yeah.
it was an organic human way that it's stuff starts with little things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've talked about this before on the podcast. There's an episode and on West Wing, and they keep talking about, um, is he going to be here? Is he going to be here? He's going to be here. And it turns out James Taylor is going to be in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, James Taylor, how great. And he starts playing a song I'd never heard, Sarah. I had never heard A Change Is Going to Come. And I was like, what's this song? Why
From
isn't James Taylor doing a James Taylor song?
yeah,
And what is this talking about? And then you hear President Bartlet talking about Sam Cooke. And I knew Sam Cooke from It's Another Saturday Night, and
yeah,
You Send Me.
yeah,
And it led me to finding this song and learning more and more about the civil rights struggle, and how this song and how Blowing in the Wind helped inspire him to do that. And so it is not a true musical moment the way you think of like a montage,
yeah,
but if I had to name, like, okay, name 10 of your favorite songs, Jesse, A Change Is Going to Come would be on that list. And it's all because West Wing used it.
Right. Yeah, that's absolute. And side note,
Yeah.
Leslie Odom Jr. playing Sam Cooke in One Night in Miami.
Yes.
See it if you haven't. Oh my God, it's fantastic. He's so
Yeah.
good.
Oh, he's so good in there. And yes, I agree. And yeah, so just absolutely wonderful. All right, what's your number three?
Number three. Okay, number three is from Noel. It is Yo-Yo Ma playing the Bach Suite in G major. And the reason being because as he's playing it, we're getting to see what really was going on with Josh and getting the truth of what happened with his PTSD. And so it was this buildup of this crescendo of the music and the urgency of the music, um, uh, culminating with him smashing his hand into the window. And then right after that, once the truth has been revealed to Stanley, where he can finally release what's been going on with him, or at least begin to release the pressure cooker on the PTSD, um, the music in the suite changes to a more major key kind of sound, because I mean it's in a major key, but the crescendo up had felt very minor key. And then as soon as that moment happens with him, it switches into that kind of lighter, more relaxed major key kind of sound. So I don't know if that was an intention, but as a former classical musician, it spoke to me that way. Um, so I just thought that was a brilliant use of that moment, and
Oh,
also because I love Yo-Yo Ma
oh
and he was a
yes.
cellist as well, so I grew up loving him. And but that just it was part of the power of Noel having it go that way.
Yeah, it was. And such a great episode where um and Arkin is amazing in it, right? Like I'm
Amazing.
not I'm not playing either Josh and and the whole, because Josh is used to being one of the smartest people in the room.
Mm,
And then to have someone who as smart, maybe even more than him, and to go through that and working through it is absolutely beautiful. Um, and to think about that, the courage or the audacity, however you want to call it, and of a Christmas episode
yeah.
with a great musical scene. Just one of my honorable mentions was Little Drummer Boy,
Mm,
in Excess Deo, right? Where
yeah.
just you hear that chorus and Mrs. Lanningham going, "You shouldn't have done that," you know,
Yes.
and then I think I'll go with you.
Yeah.
Um, so you're like, okay, am I going to repeat myself? And he was able to pull it off. Another great musical moment,
Yeah.
just as powerful. So yeah, great choice.
And all hail Catherine Houston.
Oh,
Oh my God. And she was just so wonderful. I got to see her on stage um, with, it was like a monologue, not
hmm,
contest, but like a showcase kind of
yeah.
thing, different actors. And so it was her and Timothy Davis Reed. Um, and I got to see what he was capable of too. And it was just, he's so good.
Yes.
And for everything that he was connected to and got to do, I really wish people had got to see more of how good he is. But getting to see both of them separately, but on the same night, uh, act live just from monologues. I mean, I already loved her, but it enriched how much how highly I thought of her abilities.
Yeah, and I love the idea that when she later went on to do Joan of Arcadia, they
Oh,
called her the Mrs. Lanahan God.
yes.
Yes,
But
which is just such a beautiful tribute to her. And yeah, the story, right? Like, don't go smoking with Aaron, you'll lose your job. Right. So,
well, but do you remember the day after 18th and Potomac
yeah.
aired, or either that day or a few days after, but there was a moment of peace or a moment of silence for her in Congress
Yes.
for, for Mrs. Landingham. I mean, like everybody knows she's, fictional, but she was that real.
She was. Oh, just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, great moment.
So sad to lose her
Absolutely. And
already.
yeah. So my number three is from Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. So two of them, which I was surprised, but K&R Part One.
Mm.
And John Hyatt is one of my favorite artists,
Oh,
and they
yes.
do have a little faith in me.
Oh, right.
And they show that, you know, Maddie and them are arguing and they keep going back and forth. We've been having this argument 6 months. We've been having this argument 10 years,
Mhm.
and they're just going back and forth, back and forth. And it's wonderful. But the thing that sells me is the Matthew Perry's character, Matt, and they had just found out that Danny's girlfriend, the Jordan McDear, Amanda Pete, is in the hospital and she's having problems with her pregnancy, with delivery. And Matt looks up to the sky and says, because he's a very clear atheist,
Mm.
show me something.
Yeah.
And she had just talked about Sarah Paulson, like, let me pray with me, Maddie, let me teach you how to pray. And he's like, this is not for me. We're not going to talk to some invisible, Santa Claus in the sky. And just that little moment of him looking up and going, show me something. I'm almost crying now talking about it.
Totally. And just a note on Matthew Perry. Around this time, I had been writing an entertainment column
Mm-hmm.
on a just a little independent website, and I'd been advocating, and this is before he did any of that, while he was still just doing Friends and these little side movies that he was doing. But I was seeing something in him in his acting, and I was saying on the column, like, Matthew Perry is a dramatic actor. Get him into some drama because he's going to really, really surprise you. And then he did his part on the West Wing, and I was like, I told y'all, he is so freaking good. And I don't know if he ever really got to spread his wings on that as well as he might have,
Right.
but I was so glad to see where he was able to show that. And he's good in everything.
Yes, absolutely. And I do agree. He was the very few episodes he did of West Wing, though, he was amazing. And
Yeah.
then, he is an absolutely horrible person on The Good Wife. I mean, just a despicable character that you just despise, which I think shows his range too. So yeah, absolutely well done. All right, number two.
Number two might surprise you.
Okay.
It's from Sports Night. It's Afternoon Delight by the Starland Vocal Band. The reason being because it's a joke but this is in the episode The Apology, where we find out what happened to Danny's younger brother, and he's told to give an apology on the air because of an interview he gave where he was advocating for the legalization of marijuana, and he was like, apologize to who? He's like, who cares? I think Isaac was like, who cares? Apologize to somebody, and then it be done with it. And so he gives this apology to his brother because he felt like his drug use led to his little brother's drug use, which led to his death. And then he had been teasing Casey along the way, about Afternoon Delight and having that like on a CD in his car or something like that. And then it's used at the end of the episode after the apology, because what do you say after that? You have to change the subject, you know? And it was an expert way, I thought, of showing the bond between Casey and Dan, where he didn't have to say anything to him. He just kind of leaned over and was like, basically, I don't think you're giving Afternoon Delight a good chance here. And then they go into what's cool and what's not cool. And it was his way of kind of easing Dan back into not having to talk about it at all. But it was such a great exhibition, I guess, of their bond and their brotherhood themselves, you know.
I totally agree with you. In fact, my number 2 is Afternoon Delight.
No.
Yes, it is. It is my number 1. And for that very same reason, I remember watching this and you know, Casey is not considered cool, and he's talking about, you know, that he's got this basically K-Tel CD that
Right.
has, you know, the Afternoon Delight in there. And after Dan bares his soul and Casey leans over, and you just know he's going to say, man, thank you for sharing, or we're doing that. And instead you start hearing those opening chords,
Right.
and him going, you know, the Grammys, they
Right.
won Best New Grammy over Elvis Costello. Are you telling me Elvis Costello is not cool? He's like, no, I'm saying that the Academy is not cool.
Right.
And when you talked about this, earning the moment, there's no way I could have had on my, you know, bingo card that An Afternoon Delight by the Starland Vocal Band was going to make me tear up.
Right.
But bam, there it is.
Yeah.
And I think if I had to pinpoint it, Sarah, this was the moment I knew I would love Sports Night. I just think it's almost an epiphany of like, oh my goodness, what are they going to do? So absolutely agree with you for all the reasons you say. It is just an amazing, amazing moment. So I'll switch up since I did 2. I'll do my number 1, and then you can end with your number 1. So that way,
It's gonna be the same one.
yeah, well, no, it's not, because I'm guessing what yours is. And mine is for a personal reason. It's The Sword of Orion, Sloop John B with the Beach Boys.
Yes.
And the reason why is I loved Dan and Rebecca. I have the biggest to this day crush on Terry Polo, you know, and you're seeing all this stuff. And then my first musical obsession was with the Beach Boys. And to hear she's talking about, you know, her ex-husband, of course, now that we know they're just separated, but didn't want her part of his life. And, you know, and Danny's, you know, like, I'm going to work through that wall of pain. I'm going to break through it. And she goes, I have a hotel. I've got champagne. And then all of a sudden you hear, we come on the Sloop John B. And she says, bring the tape. And his face lights up.
Yeah.
You know, it's not enough. I'm going to get to have, you know, a night of love with this girl that I'm falling in love with, but I'm going to get to watch the spring baseball team, you know, Orlando Rojas, to see if he's going to come back.
Right.
Just was magic for me. And so when Sloop John B and Afternoon Delight, when I hear those 2 songs, I immediately think of Sports Night now. And so, and I know I have others on my honorable mention, and I'm guessing what your number 1 is going to be, and I will totally agree with you, but just because of selfish reasons, I had to pick this one.
Well, it is excellent though, and it was also what Jeremy was going through in that episode.
Exactly.
One was about coming together and one was about falling apart. And so they were trying to be there for him, and he again was still kind of new to them,
Yes.
and then that was a kind of bonding that they got to have, um, and which I think probably because he talks about in earlier near the beginning of the show when he had to go and cover the hunting trip,
Yes.
and he was so concerned about saying anything about it, even though from the beginning he didn't want to do it. Um, that in his previous jobs he hadn't fit in,
Right.
and was very concerned about speaking his mind on anything because he didn't want to lose another job that he cared about,
Yeah.
just based on that. And Isaac says to him, your former bosses were idiots, and but Jeremy is like, well, not fitting in is how you lose a job, and he says, well, not fitting in is how a lot of people end up here. And so it's just this continuation of the bond where he could
Yeah.
feel a little bit more trusting with everybody, that he was
Yeah,
going to fit in.
absolutely. And for those of you who've not seen the episode, first off, go see it. But Jeremy's parents are breaking up after, he just out of nowhere, and there was this ship that had gotten lost, and he was trying to figure out what happened and everything. And so the sloop John B was perfect. Um, and by the way, Sarah, I I probably do not go a year without quoting Isaac's story of if you are dumb, you surround yourself with smart
Mhm.
people. If you are
Yeah,
smart, you surround yourself with smart people who disagree with you.
right.
When someone asks me for business advice, I quote that, and I always give Aaron, the great Robert Guillaume,
Mhm.
and it's saying it and delivering it because he sold the line, and Aaron writing it. So absolutely, and um, it's just a magical moment, and it wasn't musical is the only reason it didn't make the list because it is that been that important to my life, that line.
Right.
All right,
And
number one.
so number one, and I'm sure that we don't even need a drum roll on this, but has to be Brothers in Arms,
Perfect.
from Two Cathedrals. And again, from the earning the moment, you know, the buildup of everything that he'd been dealing with, Bartlett in that episode. Um, just it's so much that I don't know how to succinctly put it together, but that moment was earned when he goes out the portico and stands in the rain. And in the script, it says that he goes out in the rain as a baptism. The rain feels like a baptism to him, and he wants it. And it's that kind of like his way back in, or at least beginning to kind of get his footing again after being knocked around by everything very suddenly. Um, but it was also all of them walking as a team to that press conference. Um, and little things like we have to be watching to see it in a way. But when he refused to put his raincoat on, Charlie took his off as well.
Yes.
It was this incredible moment, even with different music or no music. But Brothers in Arms is so beautiful and perfectly the perfect mood, the perfect tone, and the perfect message. And that they, over 2 seasons, had shown that they are a team,
Yeah.
So it wasn't something cheap. They didn't only earn it over that episode, they had earned it over 2 seasons. And yeah.
I totally agree, Sarah. And luckily, um, when we first mentioned this, you and I were, you're like, man, well, right offhand, and this was one you mentioned, I went, okay, good. I don't have to include that one because she will, and we can still talk about it. It is such a perfect sign and a song, and the Dire Straits, and the lyrics and the voice sounds so tired, and the visuals, and I always notice, you know Charlie, well, hey, if you're not wearing a coat, I'm not wearing a coat. And this Charlie is so protective of the president,
Yeah.
and so in awe and in love of him, and all of them are, and
Yeah.
them all, the and it is just amazing that, you know the president is angry at God, and it is, once again earning the moment. He is a very devout Catholic, and we see that he has this incredible strong faith, and to be so mad and so angry, and to have that payoff is just absolutely, hair raising. It will send a shiver down your spine.
And that Mrs. Landingham was sort of the one who knocked him out of it, that not
Right.
her, but the voice that had been in his head since he was a teenager,
Yes.
that she started as a big sister and she ended as a big sister, and was like, I love you, but I'm not gonna pity you.
Yeah.
Get to work, and I mean, and she says to him, if you don't want to run again, that's fine, but if you're doing because you think it's going to be hard or you're scared or whatever, don't talk to me about that,
Yeah.
because I know you longer than anybody here, and almost anybody in your life.
Yeah, and the actress who played the young Mrs.
Yeah.
Lanningham was,
Yeah.
she was just lovely on the West Wing Weekly when they interviewed her, and she was perfect. And she was doing it. And you're right, like, well, I just don't even want to know you, Jed. And to hear him, it is, and that great scene, which, we debated and everything, because, like, well, um it's a cliffhanger, and we're like, no, it's
Yeah.
very clearly, you know I know you're going to say yes, because you're going to tilt and you're going to put your hand in the pocket, and it just was absolutely, and like, CJ telling him, now don't forget, you want to ask this question first, and because he's going to be a medical question, you need that,
Yeah.
and he sees that, and then he just goes to someone else, because he has had that redemption. He has had that fire in his belly again.
Right. And it was just, the whole thing was gorgeous.
I now want to go pull my DVD and watch it again.
So I emailed him after it aired, and I said, I can't breathe. This was so, every minute of this episode was so breathtaking. I just, and I'm sure he was getting a flood but he was
Oh, sure.
always good about eating. He would always reply.
Yeah.
It was always wonderful about that.
Well, and I also think, Sarah, you never overstepped, and were always very respectful of him and his time. It would have been easy, and you made it very clear that there was a boundary, that you had, you were kind enough to get a connection, and because of our kind of mailing list and everything, and you were always you kept it, professional.
Yeah, because he's busy,
Yeah.
and um I mean, I lost the connection with him a long time ago, and I still miss it sometimes,
Sure.
because it was great. And there's another I think the kind of quintessential earning the moment and being surprised by it at the same time, uh, that he's so good at these things. The you're wearing my shirt, Gordon moment
Oh, yes.
was just like, what? Oh my God. And when you look at it again, it's like, oh yeah, I see how this built up, but it was a gut punch in the very best way. And he had like different stills in his office that were framed, and he had that moment. And I think when I saw it, I grabbed his arm and I was like, oh my God, this moment, Aaron, oh my God,
Yeah.
I was like, some things I had no shame about gushing over, because I'm
Yeah.
just like, I can't believe that this exists and I get to witness it, and you're actually here and I get to tell you. So he was like, that's fine.
Well, and I was several years ago, I was on my way at the DFW airport, was going to fly down to San Antonio for a business meeting. And I'm going to check my bag, and Brenda Strong is right in front of me.
No way.
And at the time, she was on Dallas, the new Dallas remake. She was playing Bobby's second wife. And I said, hello, how are you doing? I just don't want to bother you, but I want to tell you that my son just recently discovered the new Dallas and he is adoring it. And we just think you're great in it. And he goes, well, thank you very much. And she said, do you have a camera or a phone? Would you like a picture to show your son? Like, I wasn't going to ask you. And she goes, I could tell you weren't going to ask me. I would love to. That. So her friend took a picture of me and Brenda Strong. And so we're going up the escalator. And I said, by the way, I've been a fan of yours since Sports Night. And she goes, Sports Night are my smart fans.
Oh.
And I don't know whether she was BSing or not, but it made me smile that and we talked for a few minutes. Like, she goes, I've had a really great career. I got to be able on Star Troopers, and she goes, in Desperate Housewives. I was loved doing that. And she goes, and I was able, to do Sports Night, and rewatching Sports Night. I'm like, really, Sally was not treated. I mean, Sally was ambitious, but I felt like Sally got a raw deal in a couple of ways. And maybe because I got to meet Brenda Strong in person, and I just adore. She was so lovely meeting me.
Right. Yeah. I think when she was first introduced, she was kind of cartoony and sort of one-dimensional type of character, but that was enriched. And
yes,
I really loved that Dana, confronted her because she had feelings for Casey.
Yeah.
And when Sally was like, I don't know you anything,
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, over Gordon she did, but not over Casey. And Dana coming back and apologizing, like genuinely apologizing. It was so nice to see that.
It was.
Because especially at the time, there was a lot of like, oh, women are always at each other. They're never comrades or never, which is just baloney.
Absolutely.
And, that has not been the case in my life. I have girlfriends who I am very supportive of, and that's the norm. I mean, not that you don't disagree, but it's not like we're biologically set to go at each other, and it's just silly. So
absolutely.
To see that on TV with where it was contentious but became respectful with that, but also the bond with her and Natalie, which could also be that there are disagreements, but there's a respect there and enough of a bond that they could say, I think you're wrong.
Yeah. And I love the line where Sally goes, I don't even think Casey likes me that much.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's not true, Sally, but it wasn't, it was a true statement. And it was heartbreaking to hear her say that. Right. So, just amazing. All right. I've already shared one of my honorable mentions, Little Drummer Boy. Do you have a couple you want to share?
Yeah. I have sort of three, and I'll just talk about them all at the same time.
Sounds great.
So I just want to say, I don't know if it counts really, but the Sports Night music, the theme music, was like this kind of Pavlovian happy.
Oh, amen. Yes, amen.
Like every Tuesday night, that music starts. I'm like, my heart, I get to see this.
Yes.
And even now, like watching some of it again, I was reminded of how happy that music made me. And The West Wing as well. Um,
Yes.
that the theme music had that effect too. Um, and then I want to say also in The Social Network, um, when Zuckerberg is leaving the bar and going back to his dorm room to start the beginning of what became Facebook, you know, the pitting the women against each other.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a score. It was the Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score, but it was brilliant in that kind of building of, you know, it was subtle, but it was this building of his like inner anger growing on the way back. So it's a side thing. It's not really Aaron, but it worked great. And then my last one is at the end of Dead Irish Writers, um, Oh Canada,
Oh,
because it was for Donna, even though it was a joke. Um, but it was also that it was coming from Abby after a moment that Donna was feeling really terrible about. You
yeah.
know, that Donna had called Abby out on the medical stuff with Bartlett's MS.
Yeah.
And she felt terrible because Donna's a sweetheart and would never hurt anybody, you know?
Right.
Um, and so it was not only um, the you're forgiven moment, it was a build. It was like, you did good. You
Yeah.
said the right thing. And then that led to her decision of what she was going to give up because of what Donna had said, you know, had the guts to say and then
Yeah.
regretted. Um, that the Oh Canada moment was funny, but it was also very touching in all of the messages involved in that. And then I think there's a common theme with the music is that it's never just like this song will be good here. It always means something.
Yeah. I agree, and I loved all the three or four women all talking, right? And they're all comfortable, and Donna all of a sudden, oh crap, I didn't mean to be that comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Is a great moment. That's truly, I love that. I already mentioned Little Drummer Boy, staying on the Christmas theme, uh, Oh Holy Night
Yeah.
on Studio 60 when they do the Christmas show, and they're talking about Katrina, and there's a subplot about these musicians not being able to work, and so people were calling out sick so that these New Orleans magicians could fill in and try to get enough hours for for their union. And it is a beautiful um, you know, instrumental version of Oh Holy Night set to images of New Orleans. And so I think that was a really powerful moment. And then the last one um, grew on me, but the newsroom, that's how I got to Memphis. Um, it's a Tom T. Hall song, and they're at the funeral
Mhm.
of, as Jeff Daniels talks about, I've lost my best friend, and he's talking to the grandsons, and I just seeing everyone sing and do that. I watched it today, on YouTube, and it made me smile all over again.
Mm.
That, just that moment of, Will McAvoy is there singing, with Charlie's grandsons. I
Mhm.
just think is a really great moment. And I once again, they earned it because um, Charlie had talked about that his grandson was gifted a musician earlier in the episode, and had talked about that, um, he's the meaning behind how I got to Memphis, and the the backstories in that episode is Aaron showing how everyone got to where they ended up being. So kind of had a double meaning, similar to you, like the Oh Canada story, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, so much. So much good stuff.
It's so much good stuff, and so yes, I appreciate it. Um, Sarah, this was a blast. I appreciate it. I could talk Aaron Sorkin with you every night and for just hours, and I don't think it would be, um, if we weren't both so busy, I swear I wanted to do a sports night version of West Wing, West Wing Weekly, just to go through every episode and visit with it and talk about it. And if I ever do, you're my first call.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate you inviting me because this was just so beautiful, and it's been a while since I revisited any of that. And so this was so lovely, and I really appreciate you thinking of me.
no problem. All right. So did you do your homework about the Mary question?
I did.
Oh, yay! Because I was going to cut this out if you didn't.
Oh,
Um, so, if you are a fan of Sarah or an Aaron Sorkin fan, and you've never listened to Set Listing Bruce, I end every episode asking my guest the Mary question. And what the Mary question is: Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He just recently retired, and uh, his seniors would spend 2 days taking the song Thunder Road by Bruce Springsteen, break apart, look at the imagery, look at the lyrics, talk about the themes, and at the end of the 2 days, they ask the question, does Mary get in the car? So Sarah, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
I have to, and I can see where it could go either way. What I hope is that it's no.
Okay.
She does not get in the car. And mainly because the whole narrative is that she has been through some bad stuff with a lot of bad guys. And the way that he is stating his case, basically, he's not presenting himself as any better. And he's using a thing that I see happen sometimes where it's like trying to, I want to say it in the best way. Basically, that the guy knows he's not going to offer that much better, and so tries to bring the girl down,
Yeah.
and so that she'll accept him or just go with it. And that kind of what they call the negging,
Yeah.
you know.
My wife says the reason she doesn't like the song is she thinks it's about settling.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that's why she is not a fan of the show, of that song. So I can certainly see that.
yeah. If he made a better case for himself,
Yeah.
that maybe this is a turning point for her. Maybe there's someone who sees what she's been through, which he does, but he's using it to his advantage to not only get her on board with him, but to be another one who doesn't have to make any kind of an effort. And so I'm just like, my hope is that she sees this would be a repeat of old patterns, and that she says thanks, but no thanks.
Um, I love that answer. Well said. I do. Someone asked me once, and it's about 60-40.
Mhm.
60% say she gets in the car, 40% says she doesn't. I will email you one of my favorite answers. I had Bex, who is a fellow podcaster who had never heard the song, and she did not listen to the song. She just read the lyrics,
Yeah.
and she basically said that that it was a murder mystery, and that if she gets in the car, he's going to kill her. Don't do it. So, and she's like, I hope I haven't offended you. I'm like, no, I think that's one of the best answers ever, So I am not disappointed, and I am not shocked that I'm not disappointed, Sarah. You are always had great insights and great thoughts. And so thank you so much for sharing and giving that answer. If someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
Oh gosh, all over social media. Um, Usually, if you search my handle, which I've used forever, um, uh, at LA Dreamer, LADREAMR, so without the last E.
Okay.
Um, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. Is that it? I'm
Yeah,
kind of
that's
everywhere.
it. No, no,
Uh,
no, that's good.
yeah, so I'm reachable for sure.
Good, good. Well, I hope you had fun. This was such a joy to do this again and just to spend time with you. As I said, that some of my favorite moments were having that discussion with people like yourself and enjoying Aaron's music, his writing. And so, and it was, I agree with you, this was a lot of fun to go back and think about it and pick and choose. And this made for a very special episode for my anniversary month. So thank you so much. And I will be emailing you and we'll meet up with masks on because we are responsible and we will get together and share a beverage or food soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this. Is just really, really, really special, and I appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you. Hang tight. All right, listeners, you let us know what we missed. Email me, setlustingbruce@gmail.com. But in the meantime, go get vaccinated. Go wear a mask. Remember to social distance. Wash your hands. Let's all be good to each other because that's the only way we're going to get through this. And for now, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.